Moments with Mark chapter 6, starting with verse 14. Herod Antipas, the king, soon heard about Jesus because everyone was talking about him. Some were saying, "This must be John the Baptist raised from the dead. That is why he can do such miracles." Others said, "He's the prophet Elijah." Still others said, "He's a prophet like the other great prophets of the past." When Herod heard about Jesus, he said, "John, the man I beheaded, has come back from the dead." And verse 17 starts a flashback. For Herod had sent soldiers to arrest and imprison John as a favor to Herodias. She had been his brother Philip's wife, but Herod had married her. John had been telling Herod, "It is against God's law for you to marry your brother's wife." So Herodias bore a grudge against John and wanted to kill him. But without Herod's approval, she was powerless, for Herod respected John, and knowing that he was a good and holy man, he protected him. Herod was greatly disturbed whenever he talked with John, but even so, he liked to listen to him. Herodias' chance finally came on Herod's birthday. He gave a party for his high government officials, army officers, and the leading citizens of Galilee. Then his daughter, also named Herodias, came in and performed a dance that greatly pleased Herod and his guests. "Ask me for anything you like," the king said to the girl, "and I'll give it to you." He even vowed, "I will give you whatever you ask, up to half of the kingdom." She went out and asked her mother, "What should I ask for?" Her mother told her, "Ask for the head of John the Baptist." So the girl hurried back to the king and told him, "I want the head of John the Baptist right now on a tray." Then the king deeply regretted what he had said, and because of the vows he had made in front of his guests, he couldn't refuse her. So he immediately sent an executioner to the prison to cut off John's head and bring it to him. The soldier beheaded John in the prison, brought his head on a tray, and gave it to the girl, who took it to her mother. When John's disciples heard what had happened, they came to get his body and buried it in a tomb. Well, Herod Antipas was the son of Herod the Great. Herod Antipas came from a family of intrigue, violence, deceitfulness, cruelty, and sensuality. It was politics at its worst. And Herod was a tormented soul. In verse 17 starts the flashback to what had happened and why he was so convicted and disturbed. He had killed John the Baptist. And hearing Jesus in the area doing mighty miracles, people were talking that maybe John the Baptist had somehow came back to life, and now just Jesus was John the Baptist doing these miracles. In verse 18, we see Herod's incestuous marriage. John the Baptist's words really stung and hurt Herod. He had an uneasy conscience. In verses 16 through 18, we see that this cutting conscience in the heart of Herod Antipas was disturbing him. And John the Baptist stood for and preached holiness, and it really cut to the quick of Herod's heart. You see, holiness affects our ethics. Holiness affects our character. The Herods dabbled in religion, but they were not committed to their faith. When Herod heard John the Baptist, he was convicted to the heart. So this cutting conscience of Herod was weighing heavy on him. In verses 19 through 25, we see the crafty conniving of Herodias. In verse 21, Herodias waited for an opportunity to trap Herod and to get John. It was a birthday celebration that really went bad. At this birthday celebration, there was drinking and sensuality, and it led to the opportunity for Herodias to get back at John the Baptist for his preaching of truth. Herodias had a daughter that danced, which influenced the king to make a rash vow. So the trap was set in verse 23. Herodias and her daughter had set a deadly trap. You see, our home life influences our children. How parents live influences their children. It can be for the good or it can be for the bad. Certainly, here in verse 23, we see a bad example of that home life. Sad to say, but the lives of children and teens may be twisted or warped by bad parenting. Or the lives of children may be made better and enhanced by the example of good parents. We need to often pray for our children and pray for our grandchildren. So we've seen the cutting conscience of Herod Antipas, and we've seen the conniving of the mother and the daughter. And then it ends to a cruel compliance by the daughter. The daughter complied with it all and asked for John's head on a platter. Most likely her ghastly trophy was on display for all to see. Herod Antipas was grieved, and he really regretted the decision to behead John the Baptist, but it was too late. We see too often today that the pressure of public opinion is what motivates people in their lives. Polls rule politics, and peer pressure often rules in the average person's life. Too often we care what others think. Herod Antipas was weak-willed and cared what others thought of him, and then gave in to the pressure. John the Baptist paid dearly for preaching the truth. He literally lost his head. He was beheaded for preaching the truth. There is a movie, A Few Good Men, that reminds us that people can't handle the truth. And sad to say, sometimes that's so true. The work of John and Jesus often intertwined in the gospel story, and soon Jesus will face his own death at the hands of religious and political leaders. Even today, the truth is not always welcome, but let's be people of truth and holiness anyway.